like category that he thinks activity is too broad. So it's so broad to the point where it's like unfalsifiable. So this is like problematic because like it's always defined in the like in terms of the antithesis, like it's always defined in contrast to passivity. And when activity is so broad, like there's no room for a passive there's no room for something called a passive audience anymore. So he points out several flaws in research. So like when participants are asked to respond to questions about how they use media, obviously they're going to be conceived as active audiences because they are forced to rationalize and like make meaning of the media that they use, right? And he also problematizes the fact that selectivity and choice is equated to activity, because like he used the example like do more brands of blue jeans equal less conformism? Like that's like very confusing. And
okay, I'm going to stop you one sec. Maybe can I ask you to turn your camera on, then we can see you.
Oh, okay, sorry, can you give me a moment? I just need to move up.
Can no problem. Cindy can run my class for me. That's good. Okay. No problem.
Okay,
there you are. Okay, cool. It's okay. Go for it. So blue jeans, right? You're talking about choices, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was saying, I like what I got from it, that he was problematizing that notion of like equating greater selection and choice to activity, which is what, you know, Western theories usually do, because they come from a neoliberal like sort of background where like individual choice is everything. And also like he problematizes involvement, the equation of involvement with activity, because like it's just, thinking is kind of inevitable. Like I think that's what he's saying. Like when you watch a media text, like you can't be considered active just because you're thinking about it, because we're thinking all the time. So yeah, so the notion of a passive audience is like he feels like it's too, like from what I gather, it's like too quickly and adamantly rejected by Western scholars, especially because like it denies any sort of power of human reasoning and the notion of natural rights, which is, I think, quite important in the Western context, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, that's what I got. And then what I had the most problem with in the reading was his recommendations of how to reconceptualize activity, and the bit where he talks about the brain, because I have no background in science, so I really did not understand that.
Yeah, he talks about cognitive processes and pre-conscious and consciousness. That's another psychological level, but he's don't have to kind of like fret about that. Okay, very good. Anything else before I move on to someone else?
Anything? No, that's kind of
okay.
Yeah, all we discussed. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Henry. Xin who else is it? Ray. Was it Ray? Where are you? What was was it a similar take, or did you find other areas problematic?
Yeah, it was pretty similar, but a lot less detailed. Basically, we looked over what the general idea of active and passive audiences were, and then I discussed a bit more about how passive audiences, because it is such a broadly, because activity is such a broadly defined term, how Bioka goes into how subconscious effects can influence passive audience, and that is where our discussion went a bit more, because we just looked at what is subconscious activity and how do you how effective or how accurate, how reliable is it to say that activities that we can be influenced by subconscious activity, because in the end of the day we still do make our own decisions of what to watch and what not to watch and what we like and dislike.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically our biggest question was, how would we define passive audiences with the idea of activity? Because that is for me the biggest problem is that in the end of the day everyone varies on what they prefer, dislike. And if the passive audiences was that we were impervious to influence, then there should be some sort of general or universal attitude towards media.
Okay, all right.
And so one question I had on my own was that is it more reliable to look at audience members as active or passive as an individual, or is it that we look at the whole audience as active? because I think it varies more on the individual than audience as a whole.
And that's what he talks about at the end when he recommends you to start looking at cohort demographics. Okay, very good. Okay, so you sort of covered the other half that Sydney didn't touch on. So that's very holistic. So very good. Who else? Was it Ashley from your scanning and your sharing?
Yeah. Wait, let me make sure my camera's on. Okay, hi.
Okay, hair looks good, so fine.
Thank you. So basically what I got from the reading was the different aspects of audience activity, which is like selectivity, utilitarianism, intentionality, involvement, imperviousness to influence. And then, I also thought about, I also read about basically the passive audience being a very one-way influence, basically us not being able to respond in the, I think it's the sender-receiver model, like us just being the receiver and not being able to portray or give any feedback to the message that we're being received. And then also the concept of strong versus weak audience, which I had a bit of a problem with because I couldn't really see the distinction between a strong audience, a strong active audience concept versus the weak active audience concept. And then basically that's what I got after a very, very quick reading. But again, the thing that I didn't really understand was probably the cognitive dependence and then the psychological issues like the conscious and preconscious mind.
Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, nice. So I think you guys covered more or less the whole sort of article. What you guys didn't really touch on is the recommendations. I think Sini did mention a little bit of it. There's recommendations towards the end. He actually says we need to re-look at audience theory. Okay, so I will try to speak as plainly as I can because that's the only way I know how. And hopefully from that audio recording, you were able to hear my interpretation of this literature review. So actually what Bioka has done is he has looked through a lot of communication theory, focusing on audience research. So much so that he started tearing a lot of it apart, as those of you who have read it will discover. It takes maybe at least 2 sittings to go through it. So first one, you read through holistically. Second one, I would suggest you go through it maybe section by section and pointing out parts you may understand, don't understand. And then importantly, after you have digested everything, look at the end bit. So he specifically does point out, I'm not going to lecture anything, but he specifically does point out that certain theories breaks down audiences differently, based on how they behave as active audience. And it's very difficult to be passive in this world because if you don't participate in the medium, how can you be considered a passive audience? So basically that's my thrust of it. I mean, you can disagree with me, but that's what I got from it. And but the audience member behaves, makes his or her decision based on certain intentions to use a medium, why they're using it for. They select it, so they have the power to select it. There was another one, a utility, so there's a transactional relationship with the medium. So like I was talking about online, it was buying something, right? That it's a utility. I do something, I get something in return. So those are some of the breakdowns that he sees active audiences at. And then he goes on to, I mean, he does kind of repeat a lot of other people's theory because he wants to analyze and dissect them. But he also reminds us that passivity is difficult to achieve because we are considered as we're in a democratic society, we have choice, we are rational, and it kind of sits in like the Western liberal values or the Western political structure, or Western liberal values and the Western society's way of life, that we're always not receiving without thought, we're not receiving without interpretation, and we're not receiving without thinking, right? So that's what but then he also takes a flip side to, yes, we assume that we have choice, we're able to select the medium that we choose from, but we're also limited by the choices that we're given. So in terms of, he relates this strongly to consumerism and how we go online to pick from 10 different things or 5 different things, but are we actually given real choice, or has that been decided by someone who is more powerful than us, or some big brand, or Apple, or whatever, or Lazada, or whatever? So do we really have choice? So he's just questioning that. And that's something that you will find a lot when you're observing your mobile usage, when you're downloading stuff, when you're looking at your content. Are you really given the choice, or you just pointed or funneled to a certain thing based on your search engines, based on the algorithms of whatever you use? That's why you're presented with always a particular set of pictures, set of news, a set of notifications. So that is one other aspect. Now, the cognitive theory, I wouldn't fuss so much about that to apply to your mobile phone usage, because then you'll need to go and do like sampling of how you behave cognitively, how you create, how you make choices based on, I don't know, your neurological processes. I mean, that is not a question. But what he does talk about that is the conscious mind and the pre-conscious mind. And if you are into work about consciousness, which is another level altogether, it is just about being aware of the choices, being aware that you are made to choose a certain way, being aware that you are made to pick TV or pick Netflix above YouTube, being aware that you are engaging in a particular social media platform. To me, that is enough for you to understand. You don't have to fuss over like, oh, I don't see how cognitively I can behave in a certain way. You can't measure your own cognitive processes. You need somebody else to help you do that. So not to worry too much about that point, but just to understand that when he talks about consciousness and pre-conscious concepts, pre-conscious is, from my understanding and my reading of his analysis, is already defined by acts of socialization. That means you already have a predefined view about particular person, woman, gender, woman, teacher, a school, object, issue, without knowing it, without actively being involved in it. So it gets quite abstract. So that is what he means by pre-conscious mind, that then your decisions are guided by, you don't like black people, you don't like yellow people, you may not be aware that you're choosing to side with the woman rather with the man because you're a female as well. So that is the pre-conscious concept that I gather from his work. So we may have that, and that could be something you observe when you are making choices like, I rather support an Asian application developer than to buy Apple, for instance. But that's being quite aware actually. Or maybe you are defined by, say, your Asian cultural values, your Hindu cultural values in making choices. A lot of you talk about conservatism in your first video and how you're guided by your family values. That already could be very well pre-consciously determined because you've been raised in that household for 20 years or 19 years. So that is what Bioka drives at. Of course, it goes into like so many studies, isn't it, of people making decisions based on that. Okay, so that is the more sort of fuzzy part of the article. Then towards the end, he gives you recommendations. The audience theory is not easy to understand, as we know. It needs time, but it also needs an openness to the fact that we can't all be active and we can't all be passive. There is certain passivity in our behavior because of this preconditioning. So what do we need to analyze? So he gives you, I think, see, you correct me if I'm wrong, I've got to that part. So he gives you, I think, 4 or 5 sort of recommendations, right? He tells us to abandon a very sweeping definition of active audience. And then he teaches us or tells us to maybe look at who is communicating the message to us. So when you are analyzing your own mobile phone usage, think of what app you're using, who's behind that app, what are they trying to tell you, what are their motivations, what are their objectives. I'm just talking this in terms of your assessment so that when you read his material, you can take his analysis and use it against your mobile phone observations. What else does he talk about? let me see, there is a moment-to-moment interaction. So this is quite interesting. This is quite interesting because in phone use, you spend a lot of time there. Do you realize how your interaction may change within minutes, within seconds? I mean, it's quite granular, but it's an interesting concept. Like if you see a notification, you're supposed to do your assessment and then you get distracted, you go on to another platform and start surfing social media, whatever. That change of decision also shows you whether you are being guided by your own free will, a decision you've made yourself, or it is something that's sort of brought on by, I don't know, a push factor where the advertiser puts in something interesting and you get distracted and you move on to another app. So notice your behavior, when you're observing the hours that you use your device or your apps. So that he talks about, so that granularity also must be considered. What else? Include the psychological role of the media, specifically its formal structures, and what processing of information happens. So similarly, when you are then looking at your own use of, say, WhatsApp to move to a social media platform, then you maybe move to Discord. Why do you behave that way? Because were you looking to answer a query, or because your friend buzzed you, you went to chat with them to communicate or something? So just consider just some of these movements when you're looking at your own usage. Define the role of media socialization and habituation. So culturally, as an Asian person, do you tend to lean to a particular type or genre of apps that you use? Maybe you like a particular brand of music, movies, etc., or you're into text, or so this may show in your choice of what apps you decide to analyze. So he's saying it's very hard to be passive, but there is some elements of passivity if we look deeper into how we are socialized. So that's what I kind of pulled out from this. If you look deeper into how we are socialized, how we are conditioned as an Asian, foreign, woman, man, young person, old person, this race, that race, student, professional, and how that socialization then affects the choices we make. Simple things like, I've got more income, I can shop more, so I might spend a lot of time on my, buying stuff I don't need. Why are you buying stuff you don't need? And it's motivated by etc., etc. Or I don't, then my choices are driven to something else. Or I only use these 3 apps just to communicate about school. Why is that important to you? So in this sense, it will be interesting to, or maybe not, depends on how you look at it. It'll be interesting to reflect on your own usage of your mobile phone. Now, there is no like minimum number of apps you have to monitor, because it really depends on your own use. So if you decide that, oh my God, I'm actually using 10 apps and this is crazy, I can't cope with it because there's so many things to monitor, pick 5 most frequent ones, or pick 3 most frequent ones that you feel gives you enough room to analyze. I don't want to give you a formula because I don't know your usage. So yeah, so then it saves you a bit more work, and then maybe you're able to analyze it in greater detail. Okay, I'm going to pause for a while. Do you have any questions, or you're gone off somewhere? If you have questions, can you just turn your camera on?
Can I ask something?
Yes, who's that?
Me.
Ashley, okay. You turn your camera on, then I can see you.
Hold on.
Okay, so so that I can know who you are also, it helps. Yes, go for it.
Okay. So basically, because I've tried to monitor my usage before, basically I go to my settings and I monitor like how much screen time I've had on this particular app, and then if I choose maybe the top 3 or top 5, then I analyze based on all the criteria. I tabulate it in a sort of table, or maybe a numerical, I'm not sure how I'll do it, but probably in a table, and then from there I'll just analyze everything based on Bioka's reading. Is that correct?
Yes, so can use his analysis to see to see if whatever he's saying makes sense to what your behavior. But also what's important is we're not going to pigeonhole ourselves. So somebody had like a quite a panic question about, oh, I don't think I'm ever going to be passive. I'm always feeling that I'm active. Does it? But then I'm into social media, and does it mean that I'm conforming to the social media movement, etc.? No, it doesn't mean that you need to be one or the other. We are actually both. But how we are both depends on how we analyze our activity, right? If we are watching something more than the other, we are clicking on something more than the other, we are actually transacting more, we're buying more things through this app. It just gives us a bit more detailed information about how we behave as an audience member. Yes, Ray, I saw you turn your mic on. Yes.
It's when monitoring our app usage, what are we supposed to monitor exactly? I thought it was just like how much time we
Yes.
spend on the app, and do we have to like monitor what we do on those specific apps as well?
Specific what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
If it's a social media app, do we have to like monitor whether we chat with people more or like browse the app more?
So so it depends on what you use more. So if you find yourself using chat more, then you take note of, like as you said, screen time, right? But if you don't have that way to monitor, then you have to do it. You actually have to do it pen and paper, right? Okay, morning I get up, the first thing I turn on is WhatsApp, and I spend roughly half an hour on it. Now, if you're finding an 8-hour monitoring thing is quite impractical, so perhaps decide first, before your 7-day observation, decide first, you know already where you go to often. You decide first, okay, for the next 7 days, I'm going to look at these 3 apps or 5 apps, gaming, and I'm going to see how many times I open it and what I do on it, and then just make that log, and then you tabulate at the end. So that might be easier. So you may use, like I said, 10, which is too much. So narrow down to things that you know you always go to. Social media, if you don't want to, like you're on the browser a lot, but you don't have to share your browser history with us because that's your own data. But you can take note of how long you spend there. Why are you on the browser? Are you bored? Or are you looking for entertainment? Are you looking to do your assessment? Are you looking for readings? Are you looking for a job? You know, just that general purpose, so that you can know that, okay, my motivation was this or that or that. I don't need to know your exact links or whatever, because that's private data. What else would it be specific? Yeah, so does that cover? Because it's good to discuss it, then I know any technical issues, because I think Adlina had, problems with data and bandwidth and stuff.
We were supposed to put into categories, right, instead of naming a specific app.
Like, let's say entertainment, social. Yeah, you can just keep it as general as that, because that's what's also stated in the assessment. Because some people don't want to say that I spend a lot of time on WeChat or whatever. Just keep it as, yeah. So then it gives you, but you know yourself, your motivations, right? And then you're able to explain. Yeah, okay.
So try and have like a log of what we do on this app specifically as well.
Yes. Very good. Yes, Lakshani. Now you have to do the readings, yeah.
I would like to know how you want us to tabulate the information, say, because okay, so I don't like game, and I'm mostly on like social media. So can I just say the apps that I always use, like say Twitter, WhatsApp?
Yeah,
Instagram?
if you're comfortable sharing that, yes.
So how would you want us to would you want us to like take a screenshot from our phone that we use this much, or do you want us to like tabulate it?
I want you to tabulate it in like a nice graphic. So what graphics do you think best shows the amount of time you spend on Twitter, WhatsApp? I don't know what else do people use.
Okay, so basically if you say an average time that you use over the 8 days, or every day tabulate the usage?
I would let you decide in whether you want to use like a pie chart maybe, or a bar chart. Because I'm speaking in dinosaur terms, because some of your videos were really excellent, like you know, and I do want to share one before the end of the week. So there are lots of nice sort of programs out there you can use to capture that sort of data. But as long as I understand it, so how many hours on Twitter a week? Maybe you have a bar chart, it's easy as that, or a pie chart. What else
each
can?
app,
Yes. If you're
like
happy naming each app, do that, because some people don't want me to know, don't want the university to know, oh, I spend about 24 hours on WhatsApp, or only 3 hours on email, or 2 hours on Moodle, which is shocking if anybody does that. You know.
Or
So
can we use Moodle as an example?
your choice, Jonas, it's because it's your reflection paper. You're reflecting upon your own use of a particular online app. Moodle does come in an app format.
Yeah.
Is it?
So,
Yeah, right?
okay.
You could, if you want. I mean, you want to impress your marker, but you need to then analyze why you're spending 2 hours on Moodle. It's up
Okay.
to you.
And also, is there a minimum requirement for the number of apps that we should show first?
I don't want to give you a minimum, but think about how many apps do you think you need to write and reflect upon, say, your essay is how long? 1,000 words, right? So how many apps do you think you will be enough? Maybe 3 is good, maybe 5 is good. Anything in double digit will kind of make it quite difficult for you to monitor. So find a number that works for you. Of course, 1 is a bit too little. Then you have 1,000 words of. So clearly you will use more than 3, right, in any given situation. So anything between 3 to 5 is good, or if you want to do 8, you're fine, as long as your reflection is sound and your reflection is backed up by evidence. Okay. Yes.
And also we need to back it up with the Bioka's reading, and also do we have to like counter argue as well with other readings?
I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Okay.
I want to show you. Anything else other than the essay? Okay, that's it. Okay, very good. So I'm not sure what level are you at university in terms of writing university essays, but this link is really good from the library. I'm just going to share my screen. Now it's already, this is in your FAQ, which I will let you go through yourself. So this gives you really, really good tips on how to structure an essay. I think our first assessment, there was a lot of autonomy in writing your work log, so I got all sorts of shapes and sizes, which is fine as long as I understood your message. But now you're actually going to have to write two big essays for this unit. So use this link to look through how you structure your essay. Writing intro, writing body, and writing conclusion. And also giving like fair proportion of words per paragraph. Now, I'm not going to give you a formula because people will be so stressed in, I need to give 200 words for this paragraph, etc. No, you write based on, your arguments, and just make sure you conclude also based on your arguments. So go through this. This is really, really detailed, how to write your essays. How to structure your essays based on intro, body, and conclusion. Excuse me. And then what Lakshani also said, is important to provide evidence, which is what you do, right? You make a claim, you make an argument, then you've got to counter argue it, or you're going to back up your claim. So I want you to take your time to just look at this sort of outline and how this introduction is written, and how you pick up points to back up your argument. So let's say if you're talking about, I know, for instance, and it's a reflection paper, so you're welcome to use I have done this. So the first person narrative is allowed in a reflection paper. Let's say you talk about, I have spent X number of hours on say, I'll just use the online shopping thing. It's easier to explain activity there. I've used this platform. I spend 35 minutes consistently every morning surfing for ABCD, because I treat it as a platform to perform transactions. I'm motivated to buy this. Therefore, what does that show of my relationship with the app? right? Am I an active audience? Then you're going to back up with one of the theories. As Bioka says that, you know, we are always partaking in consumerism. These are the choices we have. But I am also limited by the number of items that are on this platform. Therefore, there could be an element of passivity in my choices, because at the end of the day, it's not completely free will. It's actually decided upon by, you know, the person that designed the app or the person that's selling the product. So what does that theory coincide with? Whose ideas can you use to back up what you just said? So that is the sort of thinking we want to see. And be granular. I talk about it not as much in assessment one because you were doing a lot of videos, but I want to see more granularity, meaning I want you to really break down what you have done, not just say, I press this and therefore this happens and therefore I'm an active audience. No, you got to explain why you chose to open this app. Then you got to explain what drove you to make that choice. Was it maybe you wanted to buy something for your Asian mother, or was it something that you feel I don't know, whether you were researching for an assignment deadline, or was it, you know, were you looking for more information on something else for a particular task? So break it down so that we're able to see your analysis on why you made the decision you did. So, which is not how we think normally, right? As we're talking to people, we don't think in that terms unless you're having a really deep conversation or a chat with someone else. But in this paper, take the time to really look at how you're behaving with your own usage. So keeping your number of apps to a minimum of 3 will be probably good. When you have that sort of deep analysis, then you're able to, you know, have a lot of room to write, etc. If you're doing 5, you know, you might find that you run out of words. You find that you're exceeding the word count. So find, like, you know, top 3 most used apps. Maybe if you can push it to 5, I leave it to you to choose. Okay, so go through this link. I think it's really good to help you just structure your essays. And let me see what else is there I wanted to talk about. Okay, so, and yes, according to Lakshani, there's used other theories. There are lots of readings out there to argue for or against a certain claim you make. That was on FAQ, there is a minimum, how many references did I say? 5, was it? Or 5, was it? Yeah, it was, I think it was 5. You roughly, you have, say, every 200 words have 1 reference, minimum reference. But if you find that you have more, that's okay lah. You can use as many references as you need to do your analysis. Okay. Yes, it's okay. Who's asking the question? Can I have the camera on? Okay. Okay.
For the wait, what was it again? Oh yeah. So for the passive and active audience, we need to mention if we are one of either. Yeah.
You may.
Just in case, can you say that you're both, and then you support your argument?
That's, I think, can you say that you're both? You decide what you are based on what you read, right? And so this, you don't know what I am. It's so complicated. But this is the whole idea of this reflection, is to reflect and look at how you behave towards a particular, you know, a particular app, right? And you decide whether, or you say, no, I am really quite active in this, but there's an element of passivity when I do this. Why? Then I will ask you why you say that. Or because So make an argument for it. And one thing about university essays, with this sort of assessment, there's no pigeonhole, right? You're not wrong to say you're completely passive. You're not wrong to say you're completely active. But you've got to convince your reader of your arguments. And that is the learning that you do throughout your university years.
Got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
what was the question? Was that the question?
Yes, and also Niran kept texted me saying he can't get into.
Yeah, he's stuck in Seremban or something. That's okay. It's recorded, so he can come to it.
Okay.
Anytime. Very good. Thank you.
Sorry,
Who else
one
had
more
question?
question?
Yes. Okay, who goes first?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, does anyone want us to go first?
It's okay.
It's okay.
Go
It's
for
okay.
it.
You can go first.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. No, I think I asked you this on Discord as well, but I'm still quite confused. Like, because sometimes I like check my phone, like WhatsApp on my phone, and then I like WhatsApp on my computer, but I still use the mobile app, but it's just not on my
And
mobile device.
that's okay, but you're using WhatsApp, right? You're using it like
Yeah, but I'm
over
using WhatsApp.
WhatsApp web,
Yeah.
which is what we all do. That's okay.
Yeah.
That means
Yeah.
it's fine. You just consider it as the same thing lah, because it's
Okay.
fine. The idea is
Okay.
to
Thank
not.
you.
The idea is not so much the. Some of you said that you don't even use mobile phones, which are shocked. Not you lah. Somebody else said I don't have a phone, and that was just really. But if you don't have that, then you have to analyze your tablet or your laptop. More importantly,
Okay.
what you analyze. Yep, good.
Okay. But I can still consider like my desktop usage of mobile
Yes.
apps. Like, okay. Thank you.
Go. Who was Ashley? Is it? Yes. Go again. You are muted. Muted.
Okay, the thing is, when I'm on my phone, I use it for recreation for most of the time because I use my laptop for stuff like Moodle. Is it okay if like probably my top 5 are probably entertainment apps like Netflix, Instagram?
That's your motivation, right? Like I said, there's no. You must not follow a set. Oh no, I must appear like I'm a diligent student on my mobile phone. No, it's your use, it's your behavior, it's your consumption, and you find that this only gives you recreational. Then you can explain why. There are lots of reasons why this can be more recreational. It's portability, it's ease of use, easy to charge, the battery lasts longer. I don't know. I'm just talking lah. I'm just thinking that might be a better, or it's cheaper. The data is cheaper through this access. And I've separated my sort of serious work mode into like devices where I sit up and that's a very good point you brought up. A lot of you talked about. I got 4 more. Well, I get about 6 more minutes now. A lot of you talk about McLuhan in your assessment video, which is interesting because when he discusses technological determinism, he talks about how technology has changed how literally we behave, not just changing choices and use of media, but also how it affects how we listen and how we see, how we watch, right? So from audio sort of talks, because of the printing press, we read more, so we depend on the eye a lot more. So that changes our whole posture, that changes our whole. So I was quite surprised that nobody in the first assessment talked about gaming applications. Everybody was quite serious. But it's okay to talk about gaming because gaming also changes your entire behavior towards the device, how you sit, whether you're speaking a lot, how you see, you're using more what hand-eye coordination. It probably changes a lot of cognitive processes as well. And that is what technology is doing to us. You notice, I mean, everybody complains of backache, neck ache, whatever. That's all down to what we use, right? So people may find that recreationally, I prefer to use this because I can slump somewhere and watch Netflix. But when I need to be serious and studious, I need to sit up right in front of, see, I probably know that, because I also do it. But you don't analyze it. So that's the deterministic part of technology, which we all discuss. But McLuhan talks about the exact change. Without realizing, we are actually becoming quite passive in terms of responding to the technology that we are using, right? So it's just and if you find that the deterministic arguments help you explain, those pre-mobile, well, none of you were born before internet and none of you were born before the mobile phone, so difficult to say. But if you make that distinction where I only use my mobile device because I can change the way I sit, I can relax more, and that represents, or that shows how technology determines my behavior, and then you back up with whatever theory, then go ahead, you can even argue for that. So don't feel constrained to just use Bjorka's theory as obviously the backbone of your article. But if you're finding a lot of recommendations he's making is to talk about how we're looking at socialization, how our culture defines how we behave, how our age, our gender, our class, and that also overlaps with the other social deterministic theory. If you find that helps you to add more references, show that you've read more, go ahead and explore that, because that's what we need to do. Okay, I got 2 more minutes. Does that cover your question, Ashley? Yes, Ray.
Miss, I just want to know if there's any specific like data gathering app that you would recommend.
Data gathering app. Data, I don't have a specific data gathering app. I think Adelina from the other group wanted to monitor the data, but the app that she used didn't give her day by day, gave her week by week, so it was problematic. So instead of looking at data, look at, I think I've rewritten the question to say, look at the time you spent, how much time you spend on each app. It's just easier to measure using that quantum. So if you spend half an hour on particular thing, or you spend 10 minutes, just take note each time. So maybe to make it easier, start by choosing the, oh, sorry, I don't know what happened there. One of you kicked me out, is it? Hey, where's Ray? Oh, okay. So yeah, so monitor the time you spend on each app. Cool. Good. I'm glad you all read it, or the 4 of you did thoroughly, and some of you who are skimmed it. Aside, it's easier to read it and then you have the questions. I usually get my digital usage from the settings on the phone. Yeah, so I don't know what phone you all use, what provider, right? What provider will help you check? So you check your own phone, you're an Android girl or you're an iPhone user, iOS user, see what works for you. But if you find that all too troublesome, just do it manually. Do a log and then just tabulate. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can we actually do it manually and just jot down our information in like the charts?
Can you, sorry, you kind of broke up the first sentence. Can you what?
Oh, sorry. Can we manually like see how many hours we're using each app and then just break it down into like the charts instead of like going through the whole process of like the app? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Do that. If you find that's less stressful, do that. So the other thing about this is don't feel compelled. Your classmate wants to use some fancy app to monitor the hours and you don't have it, and then you worry about download. Don't worry about that. Find what way works for you. So if you find logging it is easier, just log it. So okay, I've got to go. So go through the FAQs. If you're unsure, send me a message or send us a message. We won't have classes for 2 weeks. Yay! So we get a little break. But then that's where you start. Yes. Go for it.
I am so sorry.
It's okay.
When are we getting our assignment one, Mark?
She's already uploaded on Moodle, so you can actually go and look. Could someone help her?
Okay. Thank
you. It's on the, I don't know how you're going to, because I don't know what student features you'll have. So you might have to just, Moodle's not the best site to look at, but try and look at the grade book or something. Oh, I'm going to turn off my camera. Okay, so I will see y'all in roughly 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and stay in touch and buzz us if you've got questions. Thank you, Cheryl. Have a good break. You too. Go and sleep. Bye.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.